I grew up being a fastball pitcher. That's all I did was throw as hard as I could for as long as I could. There were some pitches I knew that I threw them as well as I could ever throw a baseball. And I knew when the ball left my hand that they weren't going to hit that pitch. I also never wanted a hitter to be comfortable. When I got out of the game, it was tough. It was real tough. I missed the guys. I missed the competition. I missed working out. I missed being a member of a team. If I could pitch right now, I'd pitch.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is Up Close Prime Time. He owns or shares some 53 Major League Baseball pitching records. That includes 5,714 strikeouts, 7 no-hitters, and 27 years pitching in the major leagues. Nolan Ryan goes to the Hall of Fame July 25th, and tonight from his exhibition hall here in Alvin, Texas, we'll talk to the phenomenon of pitchers, Nolan Ryan.
Even from the second grade, he was a thrower. He'd be awakened by his dad at 1 every morning to bundle newspapers, toss some 1,500 on his father's route. The die was cast. Destiny was set in motion. For 27 years, only hockey's Gordie Howe played in more games. Nolan Ryan was as overpowering an athlete as any sport had ever seen. The legend was only beginning.
25 years, 5,000 strikeouts. You'd have to obviously average 200 strikeouts a year for 25 years. Now, 200 strikeouts is a big deal in the major leagues. 25 years of that.
Well, I think if you ask me what record I hold that might endure the test of time the longest, and I would say possibly the strikeout record. Just because of the number of innings that it takes, and you have to maintain that style of pitching your entire career. And are today's players going to pitch long enough to accumulate that many innings on today's pay scale? People ask me that. I don't know, but I think at some point in time, those folks aren't going to need the money, and I think they're going to get tired of traveling, get tired under that pressure and that routine, and they're going to go on and do other things in their life.
6 times he struck out 300 in a season. He struck out 12 sets of brothers, 8 sets of fathers and sons. He punched out 47 most valuable players. And though he was the first $1 million player, what would he be worth in a time when Kevin Brown, also a former teammate, signed for nearly $11 million a year, $105 million overall?
It would be very interesting to see what my earning potential would be on today's market if I was 25 and healthy and throwing as I did as a 25-year-old. I know my boys see, they'll see what somebody gets as far as a new contract, and they're going, Dad, don't you think you could play one more year? And I said, yeah, I could probably play one more year, but there's a problem. They go, well, what's that? And I said, my phone didn't ring. Nobody's calling.
The marvel of Nolan Ryan was his sustained excellence. He pitched almost injury-free till he was 47. He started an almost incomprehensible 773 games, second only to Cy Young. He had 61 shutouts. 4 times he struck out 19 in a game. And at age 44, he struck out 203 batters. Nobody today comes close. In fact, careers flame out now before their time.
Nowadays, with sports medicine and the advances that they've made, that if a kid has discomfort in his elbow or his shoulder, they want that alleviated, and surgery is nowadays something that they do very often. They scope people all the time, and so they think it's a means of eliminating that, and that they will be back to what they were prior to whatever problem they're having, instead of dealing with it. I mean, if you're going to pitch, you're going to have bone chips in your elbow. You're going to have some fraying of tendons. That's just part of the nature of the business, and you're going to have discomfort, and you're going to have to live with it. I pitched in pain my entire career, and I learned to deal with it, and I learned that was part of it, because I came up in an era that there was no sports medicine. And you realized that if you couldn't perform on the mound, your career was over. So you learned to deal with adversity of that nature.
Baseball is no longer a pitcher's game. It hasn't really been so since Bob Gibson turned the sport on its ear 32 years ago.
If you're a purist and you like pitching, then you'll go to the ball game when there's a great pitching matchup. But for the just the average fan or the casual fan, they're bored.
Nolan Ryan didn't win the most games or the most titles. He never even won the Cy Young Award. But no pitcher in modern times pitched more fiercely longer than the Ryan Express.
You have 53 major league records. Now, okay, you get some skeptic and says, yeah, you have 25 years. You're going to have a bunch of records if you pitch that long. Humility aside, how good were you? I want you to take humility aside.
Well, I think Sandy Koufax is the most dominating pitcher I ever saw throw. I was on Sandy Koufax level on certain games. I wasn't as consistent as Sandy Koufax. I thought Bob Gibson was the toughest competitor I ever saw throw. I was on Bob's level on certain times. I was blessed with the ability to throw baseball. And the older I got, the more focused I got on baseball and pitching. And I would have liked to have been mature earlier in my life as far as focusing on my career. I think I'd have been a more dominating pitcher.
Up next, the men who tried to derail the Express, intimidating the Intimidator, as Up Close Primetime continues.
And the next pitch, he threw me a curveball, hit it off the wall for a double. And he walked all the way to second base, just stared me down, and said, "You won't never get a hit off me again." I never have.
Here at the Nolan Ryan Exhibit Hall on the campus of Alvin Community College, Nolan Ryan has listed every one of his 5,714 strikeout victims that covered the course of his 27-year career. Now, you strike out that often, and you're a hitter. You have a tendency to take Nolan Ryan a bit personally. Some cross the line in doing that. Some cross the batter's box, too. Remember when Winfield went after you? I mean, he's a big dude. He's 6'6". He's a big guy.
Well, the Winfield deal was that he was frustrated because it was his free agent year, and he was having, he was in a slump, and we were pitching him in, and we were pounding in. And I didn't even hit him that game. I just came in on him, never even knocked him down. He just got tired of it and came out. I think he had finally gotten frustrated to the point. Well, I wasn't aggressive towards him. He like tore my head off. And after that, I said, anybody ever comes out that mound, you have to have the attitude. They're not coming out there to be nice. And so the next guy happened to come out was Robin
Ventura.
And
he's 26 and you're 46.
Well, it was
and you got the best of him.
It was just one of those unfortunate things. I think, in retrospect, when he got out there, I think that he probably had second thoughts about it.
You didn't have any second thoughts.
Like I say, after I thought about it, but it was a reaction is what it was. And people say, well, what'd you think? Well, you don't think in those situations. You just react to whatever the situation is.
Sometimes it looked like Ryan was on the receiving end of somebody's fist, but a baseball off the lip was as close as it ever got.
Bo Jackson hit me in the mouth, and it ended up taking 7 stitches to sew my lip up.
But you finished the inning with your
well, I finished the game and then went in and had the doctor sew me up. But, I never thought anything about it. I mean, I was out there to pitch. And my attitude when I go out to pitch, I go out there to pitch as long as I can, and that wasn't going to keep me from pitching.
Players tried not to be intimidated by the game's most awesome pitching force, but the force wasn't with them.
The first game was, what year? I think it was 89, I think. It was 89. Threw me a fastball inside. I hooked it foul over our dugout in Texas. Next pitch, ball was behind my head. I dove forward. And at the time, I didn't know my bat was broken. Next pitch, fouled it over our dugout again. The next pitch was at my chin. I fell backwards. So now I'm so scared, it's like I'm a little kid. I'm just 19 years old at the time. And the next pitch, he threw me a curveball, hit it off the wall for a double. And he walked all the way to second base, just stared me down, and said, "You won't never get a hit off me again." and I never had.
The very first at bat, to make a long story short, I walked off of him. It was about a 6-pitch at bat, a 3-2 pitch. I walk. I flipped my bat, and Nolan was known to get upset with himself on the mound once in a while if he walked somebody. Well, he walked me, and he goes, "Swing the blank bat," and I just went, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I promise I'll swing the bat next time."
My first couple times facing him, I put the ball in play and so forth and so on. So this particular time, he had men in scoring position, had 2 outs, and boy, the crowd's roaring. And I'm standing there and I'm going, bring that fastball on, Nolan. I'm going to line it to left field. He breaks off the greatest breaking ball I've ever seen in my life. And he looks down and he goes, "I got you, dude." so you know, it was a good. That to me was the equalizer. See, because everybody talked about the great fastball, and he had a great fastball, but he developed such a great breaking ball, man. I'm gonna tell you, it just fell off the table.
I was so intimidated when I first faced Nolan Ryan. So he's one of my favorites. I watched that guy mow down more hitters with strikeouts. And I faced the guy, and I was like really shutting in the knees because I knew it was Nolan Ryan. It was incredible. And he was older, but still he had the velocity, the great windup, the picture-perfect windup. And it was an intimidation factor there, and it always been there.
Did he punch you out?
He punched me out many times.
Who was the best competitor that you faced across the field?
I think Bob Gibson was as tough a competitor as I ever saw stand on the mound. Tom Seaver was a tough competitor. I think Roger Clements, when I pitched against him, I think he was as determined to beat me as anybody I ever faced.
Now the guy standing up at the bat from the right side.
I faced Henry Aaron, and I had ultimate respect for Henry because of his power and because of the fact that he could hit for average.
The guy you're going into the Hall of Fame with, George Brett, from the left side, was as tough as anybody I know.
He was right there. You know, because of the length of my career again, in the era, I'm going to put George and Pete Rose in the same category. George, I think he had more natural ability than Pete, but because of Pete's determination and what drove Pete made him the ultimate competitor.
Who would you have liked to have faced? I mean, I know you probably...
Ted Williams.
Yeah, you would have liked Ted.
I would have liked that challenge. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I wanted to face him because I thought I could strike him out. I would like to have faced him in his prime just to see, from a pitching standpoint, what I would have had to do to try to be successful off of him.
Some of his power defies belief. Nolan's former catcher, Jeff Torborg, tells a true story about his blazing fastball.
We were in Boston, and it was very close to the end of the season, and Nolan was pitching, and there was a runner at third base, and all of a sudden he fires a high fastball just up around my shoulder height. I felt it hit the glove, and I hear the crowd roar, and the runner starts at the plate, and I look at my glove. He had thrown it right through the webbing. It broke right through and hit the backstop on a fly.
I do remember it ripped the webbing out of his mitt, and he had to change mitts. That is a true story. Now, was the leather worn? I don't know. I can tell you this, it wasn't a brand new mitt.
I'll give you a lot of credit for it, no matter how worn it was. Did you ever stop and say to yourself in the middle of something, maybe it's 5,000 strikeouts, even in your mind, even though you wouldn't say it publicly, wow, what did I just do?
Well, I can say this, that when it all lined up right during a certain part of my career, that when the ball left my hand, there were some pitches I knew that I threw them as well as I could ever throw a baseball. And I knew when the ball left my hand that they weren't going to hit that pitch.
When we return, Nolan gives us a tour of his greatest mementos as this special Hall of Fame edition of Up Close Primetime continues.
Fame induction ceremonies, Sunday at 1 on ESPN.
Welcome back to Up Close Primetime. I'm Roy Firestone from the Nolan Ryan exhibit on the campus of Alvin Community College. 35 years ago this past April, New York Mets scout Red Murph wrote a report out of a young right-handed pitcher out of Alvin, Texas. The report said this: "This skinny high school junior has the best arm I have ever seen in my life." Well, that pretty much says it all. Nolan Ryan and I took a trip down memory lane. This, of all the equipment you have in this museum, this one right here looks like something that means a lot to you.
Well, that glove there is probably the thing that of all the things is as meaningful to me as anything, because I remember picking that glove out as a youngster, probably about 8 or 9 years old, and it was the first thing that I remember that I got to buy new, because I was the last 6 kids and I got all the hand-me-down stuff.
I hate to say it, it looks absolutely ancient.
Yeah, it looks like something that...
Three-finger Mordecai Brown.
Yeah, right. It.
Now, what is this? Is this your varsity jacket?
That's it. And you know,
it looks like about a 9-year-old could wear that.
Well, you notice it's got a basketball on it.
Yeah.
That's when I was in basketball shape.
I gotta tell you, I don't think you could fit into that.
No, I don't think so.
He would sign a contract with the Mets, but as a young rookie in the minors, Nolan Ryan found out that he had to wait his turn.
They sent me to Marion, Virginia, to the Rookie League. I didn't get to suit out for the first 3 games that I was there, because I had to wait till they released a player so I could get a uniform. And they released a second baseman that was about 5'6", and I looked like I was wearing knickers.
And here's a letter from the Mets. "This is a most fair salary for an A ball player. As you know, classifications have a great deal to do with your salary, and I'm glad to read where you feel you're a double-A ball player, because I share this opinion. However, you are signing an A contract."
So I got $600 that year.
He would record the first save in Mets history, but being a member of the '69 Miracle Mets meant being a big city celebrity, and this cowboy was a lonesome star.
New York wasn't my type of town. You know, I didn't grow up in that atmosphere, and I never was totally comfortable there. I was very fortunate that I got to New York when I did, with a bunch of young players in an exciting time. Feel very fortunate for that.
He would pitch 4 no-hitters with the Angels, 2 in the same season.
In the second one, when I warmed up that day, I had the most dominating stuff that I can ever recall warming up with. And I told Tom Morgan when I came out of the bullpen, I said, "Tom, if I'm ever going to pitch another no-hitter, it'll be today." And I had 17 strikeouts. It was the most dominating of the no-hitters, and it was just one of those special days.
What are your reflections of the Houston years? There were some good times and there's some bittersweet times, too.
Well, I look at that uniform and I think about, I used to call that clown uniform, and I thought that was the worst looking uniform I ever saw. And you know, by the time I quit wearing it, I thought I looked pretty good in it. So it wears on you.
The Ranger years, of course. You never got a chance to pitch at Arlington Stadium, but these were great years, too, for you. And people thought that, you know, maybe it's just time to fade to black, but then there were 2 no-hitters coming here, you know?
I really thought about retiring, and the kids and Ruth encouraged me to finish my career on a positive note, so I went up there with the intent to play 1 year and it'd be a positive note, and I stayed 5, and some really neat things happened to me.
43 years old pitching a no-hitter. That's another thing that probably won't ever be done again. Probably.
Well, I'll tell you this, that me going to Texas Rangers and hooking up with Tom House had a big role in that. I worked out at the end of my career 5 hours a day. I would go in the morning and I'd come back in the evening, but I gave 5 hours to it a day. And my whole life evolved around my workout schedule.
Over here is the list of the 5,000-plus men who struck out against you.
The guys that struck out a lot against me was because they were in the same league at the same time I was, and a lot of them were leadoff hitters. But also, there's some guys on here that there's a 25-year span in there, you know. You take a Willie Stargell or a Willie McCovey or a Roberto Clemente, for instance, and then you come back and you look down the list, and there's guys that are still playing.
Well, you know what strikes me as unbelievable, Nolan? You struck out both Roger Maris and Mark McGwire.
And I think Sammy Sosa.
And Sammy Sosa, too.
Yeah.
Up next, the family portrait of Nolan Ryan. Welcome back to our special edition of Up Close Primetime, featuring Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan. He was a gentleman cattleman in the offseason, but during the season, especially on the mound, Nolan Ryan was anything but a gentleman.
I had a different demeanor, and the reason being than what people knew me off the field was I didn't want to know the opposition, didn't want to know anything about it.
No fraternizing?
No, not at all. And I would never go out and stand around the cage. I never went out and would visit with the opposition. And a good example one time was that Jerry Remy and I were roommates with the California Angels.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we lived together for a while. And then he got traded to Boston. And I was pitching a game, and he came up to hit with a guy on third, and they squeezed, and I tried to hit him with the ball. I tried to hit him right in the knee, and he was able to get the bat on the ball. And I told him after the game, we were going out to dinner, and I said, Rims, I tried to tear your knee off on that pitch, and he was absolutely flabbergasted that was my approach.
He was a tough guy to face. And if he felt someone was showing him up there at all, if you got a hit or whatever else, he'll show you next time. He would drill you.
Did you ever hurt somebody real bad with a pitch? Or did you ever have a fear of doing that?
Yeah, Doug Griffin, he went to bunt one time, and I threw a fastball up and in, and he didn't see the ball or he froze, and it hit him right in the temple. And that's the first time when I walked up to home plate and he was laying there, first time I ever thought, you know, I could kill somebody. And I mean, I felt bad. The first game he came back, he faced me. His first at-bat was against me out in Anaheim. And I found myself pitching him away, and I had, you know, in those days you pitched him in. And then he got 2 base hits, and I said, you know, I can't let that event affect the way I pitch people, or I'm not going to be effective. So the next time up, I went in on him.
He was never colorful, particularly quotable, or even outgoing as a player. But his family knows a side of Nolan that few saw on the field.
I told him one day not too long ago, you know, it's like, you know, we're older now. And I said, you know, I enjoy being with you even if we're not talking. We can sit here for an hour or we can talk, and it's like we don't have to be entertained. We don't have to do anything. And I said, you know, I really thought that I'd be tired of you by now, but I'm not. Lucky me.
He just went out and did his job and tried to do the best he could do to keep his team in the game every game. And no matter if he was hurt, no matter if he liked the manager, no matter if he was happy or not, inside, he had a job to do, and he did it.
There's that line from that Boughton book that all the years you think you grip a baseball, you find it's the other way around. The baseball has really gripped you. Was it hard to let go of that grip?
Yeah, it really was. I thought 27 years, I've done it my entire adult life. I was going to be 47 years old. I'd established business interests. I had other interests. I grew up with the thought that there's life after baseball, so I prepared for it. And when I got out of the game, it was tough. It was real tough. I missed it.
If I gave you one last question here, just give me the first things that come into your mind about this one word. We can tie this all together with that word, baseball.
I think baseball is the neatest sport because anybody can play it, and there's so many games within the game. And I think that's the thing I like about it the most.
We'll wrap things up on this special edition of Up Close Primetime after this.
Up Close is presented by Circuit City. Answers in every department. Low prices all over the store.
We hope you've enjoyed our up-close primetime conversation with Hall of Famer-to-be Nolan Ryan. From the Alvin Community College Nolan Ryan Exhibit Hall, I'm Roy Firestone. Thanks for watching, and good night.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, a part of the Go Network. Go. From the worldwide leader in sports,